Hi, everybody. Welcome back. This is the Saturday edition of Crafting and Crime Daily. So, last night there was a verdict in this case that I am currently covering the murder of Michael Shaver by Lori Shaver. So, what happened? Well, I'm going to tell you right after this. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new, glad to have you. If you're old, you are so welcome here to this family. What happened in this case? Yesterday was a 12-plus hour day for this jury. My God, what they had to sit through. So, one of the first witnesses on the stand yesterday in rebuttal from the state was a woman named Bettina, who was a close friend of Lori Shaver. And she had this to say: Lori's a liar. She can't tell the truth. All of this stuff about the violence was not Lori. It was not Michael. It was Lori. Yeah. Things that she would accuse him of had actually been committed by Lori, not Michael, which is why I suspect the judge said, we're not going to hear about all these acts of violence. So what I surmise, what I would think as a juror at this point is probably they were both pretty aggressive towards each other. That's what I'm thinking. All right. So then after that, they had to do what's often called the charge conference. So if you tuned in and you saw a charge conference, what it is they go over the jury instructions. The jury's not there. The jury's excused. They probably were sent to an early lunch, told to come back at a certain time. And they go over the jury instructions because there's various instructions that the judge will read to the jury. And those instructions are all kind of bits and pieces. They're all numbered, and you kind of put them all together because there's some you don't want, some that you do want. There's some special ones you might want thrown in, and that's why you always have to have a charge conference to figure out if the jury instructions are correct. Have they been typed correct? Have they been put in the correct order? That kind of thing. Anyway, so they did that, and then they brought the jury back and they started closing arguments. So the prosecution starts out by talking about, now she's charged with second-degree murder, not first-degree murder. So there's only 6 jurors, not 12. You need 12 for the death penalty or life in prison. But for something lesser than that, it's six jurors. So the prosecution started by going over the 3 elements that they need to prove beyond a reasonable doubt in order to find her guilty, Lori Shaver, guilty of murdering Michael Shaver. So, first element is that Michael Shaver has to be dead. So they prove that by bringing in the medical examiner who took out the bones. Yeah, okay, he's dead. We get it. Second, they have to prove that the death was caused by Lori Shaver. And the third thing they have to prove is that there was indifference to human life in this killing, that it was done with ill will, spite, hatred. He was shot in the back of the head. You don't get much more ill will than that. In any case, how were they going to prove? This is my question. What was the criminal act that Lori Shaver did? What did she do? How did you prove this? I don't think it was proved. What was the criminal act, guys? How did you get that gun in her hand? Anyway, that was my question. And I'd be that juror sitting back in the jury room going, wait a minute, guys. How do we get the gun in her hand? Anyway, so because on this jury, on the verdict form, the jury had to decide, is she guilty of second-degree murder? Was she in possession of a weapon? Yes or no? Did she discharge that weapon? Yes or no? Okay. So the prosecution goes on to say that she wanted Michael out of the way because she wanted her new boyfriend to come in, Jeremy Townsend. So here are the things that kind of don't make sense if you're going to believe her story, which is that her daughter shot him and then Jeremy came in and shot him after Michael was attacking her. She says it happened in May of 2016. He has never been seen or heard from by anybody, like telephonically heard his voice. There's been texts and Facebook posts, but nobody saw him in person. Nobody heard from him since December 7th, 2015. So now you have to assume that, because she says, well, what happened? What she was asked, well, what happened to Michael in November? He moved out. He went back to the airplane hangar. You've been back and forth whenever the courts would say you got to leave. Well, she had asked him to leave. So she says she asked him to leave on the 11th, the 10th, or the 11th of December. So now you got to believe that he's gone all these months with no job, no car, because he left his car there. She sold all his guns. He doesn't have any of the tools the trade that he knows, he needs to do what he does for a living. There's no outgoing calls on his phone. He's got a bank account. He has his own bank account. There are withdrawals being made out of this bank account until the account is overdrawn. And you see some of the transactions. One of the transactions that was made at Walmart in December was being made by Lori. She was using his card. So he doesn't have his bank account card. He doesn't have his phone. He doesn't have his car. He doesn't have a job. What is he doing all this time? He's not contacting any family members. He's not to get help, any friends. Nobody. Okay. Then when his mother is sick in December of 2015, a month after the prosecution alleges he was murdered, his sister calls Lori and she says, Mom's sick. Could you let him know? She says, yeah, I'll let him know. There's no outgoing calls on the calls detail records to support that she called or even attempted to call him and say, hey, your mom's sick. Then Mike's phone number gets changed in April. The phone number that he'd been using all this time gets changed in April. And then that number is used to text Jeremy Townsend's wife. This is when she was trying to expose the affair. And then 10 days after that, the phone number gets changed again to a number that Lori is now representing to the court because she had to fill out some court documents and she put that number down as her being her phone number. She had his phone the whole time. Then the flowers that were mailed to Victoria Townsend, Jeremy's wife, at the elementary school were bought out of her account, Lori's account. This is all before she says the murder even happened. Okay. Then you have to look at, they had another child named Aiden. When she took those kids to school, somebody asked me, what happened after she took the kids to school? She says she went right back home. And when she got home, nobody was there. So now we're going to, like she said, it's very close. It wasn't far away. I dropped the kids off. I came back home. So now we have to believe that she cleaned up this mess, that Jeremy cleaned all this mess up. It had to be a bloody scene. He got shot in the head. There's nothing bloodier than a gunshot wound to the head. Removed the body. And then somehow some other time came back mysteriously and buried it on our property. But what about the other child, Aiden? You took him to school that day. Did he not see any of what was going on? No, nothing. This all happened right outside your house. How did Aiden not see this or hear it? The commotion, my goodness. And then the daughter who confesses this thing, she didn't confess right away. This was years before she came forward and said, oh no, I shot him. She goes to school and just functions normally, never has any counseling for this, never. Had to be very traumatic for a 7-year-old. But Aiden knew nothing. Then think about when they found Michael Shaver. When they found him buried in that backyard, he had on boxer shorts and socks, which tells me he's probably sleeping and he was shot when he was shot in the back of the head. If you believe her version, he wasn't living there. He just showed up that day and was sitting outside her house. So she goes out to confront him. Well, I can guarantee you he probably wasn't sitting out there in his boxer shorts and his socks. Okay. Wow. So when you think of all of that, no, does that put a gun in her hand? It does not. But it certainly casts a lot of doubt on her credibility. There is no other explanation that makes any sense other than that she killed him while he was sleeping in bed and then somehow buried that body. I don't know. Anyway, the defense gets up during their closing arguments. It talks about the Constitution and how, you've got a responsibility that you're going to be taking away someone's liberty and you shouldn't take that lightly. And, what have we got here? Everything you've heard it's a conspiracy theory. It all sounds really good, but it's just a conspiracy theory. You need more, right? You need more. He said that the state was disparaging her by, talking about her affairs, things like that. That there was zero evidence, and I will agree with him there. Zero evidence that she had possession of a weapon and shot Michael Shaver on December 7th. Zero evidence. So what did the jury decide? Well, after 4 hours, they came back my live had just ended. So about 30 minutes after my live ended, they actually came back during the live with a question. And the question was this: if we've made a decision, do we have to fill out both these papers? And the judge said, yes, you do. So at that point, I knew there was going to be a verdict. But I didn't want to go live with it. I wanted to be able to talk to you about what was argued in closing arguments to help you make sense of the verdict. Because the jury decided, they came back about 8:15 my time, which is Central, 9:15 where they are. So the 6 people decided, we're going to stay, we're going to get this thing done. They come back at 9:15. The jury 4-person was a woman. Her name was announced. But what Law and Crime did was, because I went to try to go back and watch the verdict, they cut it off, probably because the juror name was announced, which is, you're not supposed to do that. I don't know why the clerk read her name. Yeah. So if you wanted to try to watch the verdict on Law and Crime after it ended, you wouldn't have been able to because they cut it off. All we know is that they had a decision. Anyway, so I did look it up. I'm not going to show you any footage of the verdict because I don't want to expose the name of this juror. There is some footage out there, and it does name the juror, and who was the 4-person. I don't think it's right that her name should be out there. But they came back guilty of second-degree murder. Now, they could have found a lesser included offense of manslaughter, but that just meant that if they had found manslaughter, it just means they couldn't decide on whether she had evil intent. Obviously, she had evil intent. She wanted to bring Jeremy, the Harlequin guy, back into the house. So, guilty on second-degree murder. So I don't know when her sentencing was. They wrapped everything up very quickly. We didn't get to see any of it. We didn't get to see her taken into custody. We didn't get to see when the sentencing would be set. When I have that information, I'll certainly pass it on to you guys. So have the rest of the weekend. Enjoy it. And I'll be live tomorrow at 11 Central on Sunday. If you want to join me for coffee and chit chat and look at the 6th week of my Great Escape event and see all of the progress you guys are making on your crafts, tune in. Bye, everybody. Take care.